I, 31 female, have been fighting with my husband, 42 male, over his family. His mother and stepfather are especially toxic. Mother-in-law is a classic boy mom, controlling, rude and boundary stomping. She called me names at our wedding and was asked to leave our rehearsal dinner. Her husband is equally chaotic. They're both alcoholics and affluent, which makes them feel entitled to control our lives, even from across the country. My husband is a good man, but he makes dumb choices and struggles to stand up to his family. He'll defend me sometimes, but acts like he deserves praise for it. For example, she called me fat at dinner. I'm 5'4", 115 pounds, not that it matters. He waited until the next day to say something because he wanted to let her sober up and think it through. He also often refuses to make plans with me if he hasn't visited his mom recently, but he won't plan visits either because he hates seeing them. The real issue, about a month ago he borrowed $2,500 from his mom without telling me. He said it was for a side business. I had a savings account that could have covered it, but I would have expected him to repay it and sit down with me to budget. My mother-in-law regularly spends that amount of money on bar tabs. I feel like my husband ran to her instead to avoid adulting. I planned a 2-week vacation for us and our dogs this summer. I paid for it and did all of the planning. All he had to do was request time off. At the last minute, he said he couldn't get time off and got upset when I wanted to go alone. Then his mom and stepdad offered to forgive the $2,500 if he visited them this summer, in the exact window we were supposed to be on vacation. Their words were, "Just use your wife's points." He thinks this is a great deal. He wants to use my travel points, have me stay home to care for the pets, and act like this is all normal. I told him I was incredibly disappointed. He says he understands, but this is a too good to pass up opportunity and wants my help booking the trip. No, I'm done. I'm not booking his flights. I'm not paying. I'm not planning anything for a trip I'm not even invited on after cancelling our vacation. I'm the planner in our relationship, but he's capable. He can read. So am I the idiot for being furious that my husband cancelled our vacation, but is now going on one with his mom and using my travel points? Oh, hun, you don't have a mother-in-law problem. You have a husband problem. He sounds like an idiot. I'm sorry he's having trouble growing up and setting boundaries. Still, there's a whole psychology industry that can help him with that. It's time for him to man up and make use of it instead of lying and stealing from his wife. No, he shouldn't use your points. His $2,500 loan is his problem. He didn't tell you when he took it, so he can keep his solution to himself. I'm sorry you have a child to raise instead of a capable, competent life partner. He sounds so enmeshed and subordinate to his mother that only a good therapist will be able to explain the family dynamics that created this situation and what steps to take to change things. I say this because if this comes from you, OP, he won't listen. He needs that independent third party. I've seen this in a friend's marriage and the therapist did precipitate change. You are the idiot. This man has been married to his mom. Why did you choose to be with a man who's always going to place you second? Why are you allowing him to treat you this way? Tell him or step up or take all his crap with him to mommy and daddy's house. I'll never understand submissive, miserable partners. Respect yourself. Get therapy to address your lack of self-esteem and confidence. Agreed. Listen, OP, you may think this will end or change, or one day he will choose you. If you plan on having kids, it will only get worse, I promise. Run. A toxic family is not worth your mental health. You will find someone who has a family that actually likes you. Speaking from the full experience of a 4-year marriage with a man and his family who hated me because I didn't take crap, you need to grow a backbone and walk away from this man who clearly doesn't prioritize his relationship with you. He's in his 40s and still runs to mommy. Get out while you can. I, 36 female, have twins with my ex, 42 male. A girl, Olivia, and a boy, Enzo, who are now teens. My ex is one heck of an idiot. We ended our relationship because he cheated on me while I was pregnant, and not happy with that, he never paid child support and was absent from their lives most of the time, only coming back once or twice during the year to play the fun dad. But, well, of course his absence affected my kids a lot. Anyway, when Olivia and Enzo were babies, I reconnected with an ex from high school, Ian, 36 male, and we started dating. The main reason we broke up was that I wanted kids in the future and he wasn't sure. Since 2 seemed more than enough for me, that problem was out of the way. Ian wasn't involved with Olivia and Enzo at first, but after we moved in together over 2 years later, he began to help me with them without me having to ask, which I was grateful for. They eventually formed a bond. We got married and Olivia and Enzo called Ian Dad for as long as I can remember. However, they always knew he wasn't their biological father. Ian and I make the same amount of money and we live in a house I inherited from my father. Ian only earns a bit less than me, there's not a big difference. With time, my ex went from showing up once or twice a year to not showing up at all for a couple of years, which is when their bond became even stronger. Ian told me he wanted to adopt them because he saw them as his own kids and he truly felt like their father. However, that never actually happened because it was a legal mess in our country we didn't want to get into. Now, last year, out of the blue, my ex showed up again, claiming to be a different man and wanting to rekindle their relationship. They fell for his act despite Ian and I warning them not to trust him completely, which is okay, I guess. They have a right to want a relationship with him. The problem began when they started ignoring Ian. It was as if they were treating him like a replacement they no longer needed, and of course my husband noticed this. One night it escalated because they had a really dumb fight that started because Enzo hadn't cleaned the kitchen after cooking, and we have this important rule in the house that pretty much means that each one is usually responsible for cleaning their own mess. And well, Ian just went inside their room to tell him he needed to clean and Enzo began to yell at him. Olivia joined in and they were telling him how exhausted they were about Ian treating them as if he were their real father, that they had a father and he shouldn't act like one just because he didn't have kids of their own. I remember Ian just left the house that night without saying a word. I told Olivia and Enzo they made the wrong choice in treating Ian like this. When their real dad leaves again, I didn't want to see them crawling back to the one who actually took care of them and was always there. Ian came back the next day and he was incredibly upset. I did my best to comfort him and he told me he felt disrespected and that there was no coming back from this. It was hard to hear, but I told him that if he no longer wanted to be involved in the twins' lives, I wouldn't be angry at him. He cried a lot that night and cried himself to sleep during the next days. It was awful to see him like this, and I couldn't do anything but try to comfort him. I tried to talk to my kids, to tell them they really needed to apologize, but they refused completely, saying they had a dad and didn't need him, and it made me question what kind of kids I was raising. As predicted, from one day to the other, my ex left the city and never called Olivia or Enzo again. When they realized what had happened, they were devastated. I was there for them, but it shocked me how they wanted to pretend everything was okay between them and Ian, calling him Dad again. Ian told them he was not their dad and would clearly never be. This has been ongoing for some time. They were thinking Ian would change his mind eventually and forgive them, but that hasn't happened. As a last card, they came to me and told me to speak to Ian. I told them we'd talked many times, and it was clear Ian would no longer be involved in their lives, which is what they wanted anyway, so I don't know what the problem was. They were shocked by my response and kept trying to convince me, but I made clear that my husband is a human with feelings, not a wallet and a replacement for the pathetic man they like to call real dad. If they thought they could disrespect people who care for them without any consequence, then they were very, very wrong. I told them there was no going back from this, that things would not be the same, and they had themselves to blame for that. They shouldn't have taken for granted a person that was always there for them. They went crying to my mom after that, and she told me she understood why I was upset with them, but couldn't side with my husband in this, that they're kids that made a mistake and deserved a second chance, and I should try to solve things. And to be honest, I don't think I can. I love my kids and they will always be my priority. This hasn't changed my love for them, but I also love my husband. He's a great man who stepped up when he didn't have to, providing support for me and the kids. He was the father they never had for so long. Even if I try, I don't think I'm even close to knowing the amount of pain that can cause you to have the kids that you raised as your own for years to tell you you're not their real dad and to treat you as literal trash. As much as I want them to make up, I know my husband is so hurt, and they caused that over what? A man that they'd seen barely like 7 times in their whole life? Ian is now convinced that Enzo and Olivia don't love him and only see him as a replacement. He thinks that if their real dad ever shows up again, they'll treat him like crap again, well. However, I don't think my kids would do that. I know he has every right to feel that way, and if Ian no longer feels comfortable being involved in my kids' lives, then I don't think I can contradict him. They just broke our relationship. Ian is usually a reasonable man, and he has thought a lot about this, so I know that he's sure about his choice. I know he's been crushed by this, and now he wants us to have a kid, but I've told him no because I believe he just wants to replace Olivia and Enzo. Despite respecting my husband's decision, I don't want my kids to lose the man they've known as their father since they were born. I know it's going to crush them, and it will affect them even more in the future. Sometimes I wonder if I should listen to my mom and try to talk Ian into trying to repair their relationship. But I don't know. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I feel for the kids because it sucks to be rejected by your bio father, and I have a strong hunch he was talking crap to them about your husband. This is a valuable lesson that you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to automatically forgive you and return to the way things were. Teens are massively selfish and idiotic. By the way, tell your mom to butt out because the twins are learning the consequences of their actions. Have they apologized at all? If not, there's no way you should ask Ian to accept them back as his children. They need to grovel to him and have a deep and meaningful conversation about why they did it. In other words, they need to accept that what they did was wrong and share their understanding about it with Ian. Then Ian can decide what he wants to do. Family counselling may be helpful in this regard, but until the kids apologise, I wouldn't pursue it if I were Ian. Apologies first. And not just apologise, but change behaviour. Personally, I'm on Ian's side of this, as he is correct in that history will probably just repeat itself. The kiddie's sperm donor has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can breadcrumb affection, and his children will come running at the drop of a hat, regardless of the hurt that's caused, and the devil can take the hindmost. I fear the kiddies have a long, hard slog ahead of them if they're truly repentant, if being the operative word. I really wish deadbeats would just think about their actions on the kids they abandon. But then they wouldn't be deadbeats, I guess. I, 18 male, am the oldest of my parents' 5 children. There's me, brother, young teen, sister, tween, and brother pre-tween. My parents never treated me that great, and the older I got, the worse it seemed to get. However, I noticed that as my siblings got older, it was different, and they were night and day different from me. I wasn't allowed to spend a lot of time with friends as a kid. My parents said there was no way they'd all do that and I should be home. But my siblings from kindergarten age could go to friends' houses and younger if the friend lived in our neighbourhood. When I asked my parents about it both times, they told me I was their practice and they didn't want all their kids to whine into their faces about missing out. My dad had a rule with me that you eat everything on your plate, or it either gets saved for next time or you don't get to leave the table. When I say everything, I mean clear your plate of everything. So if I was full and left, say, 3 peas or something, I was forced to stay and finish, or they'd be taken aside and served to me the next time. Not with my siblings. And when I asked my parents about that, they said they learned from me. The next thing was grades. My parents were always extremely upset when I got anything less than an A. Even if it was a B and everyone in my class got a B because the test was especially hard, it didn't change my parents' stance. I was grounded for Bs. I was forced to do extra chores for a month and I was left out of stuff. However, my siblings could still get Cs and Ds and it didn't change anything. This was another thing I brought up to my parents, and by that point they were tired of me asking why things were different. They told me I was their practice run and they had learned things from me. And I know people learn from parenting as they go, but they learned with me and gave the benefits to my siblings. I saw none. They were never nicer or let up on me. They didn't apologize for being hard on me or for yelling at me almost all the time. Nothing like that happened, and there are multiple other ways they were different between me and my siblings. Expectations for chores were consistently higher with me. Birthday and Christmas gifts were noticeably different, prompting both sides of the family to question what they gave me as it seemed so little compared to my younger siblings. It wasn't that mine were more expensive, it was always the opposite. They were also really strict times set for me. I wasn't allowed out past 4 p.m. during summer, even in my teens. I wasn't allowed to attend certain birthday parties. Just so much stuff. My parents got annoyed over a year ago. My guidance counselor asked about any financial help I get with college and wanted to know if they'd save for me or anything. The way they reacted made me angry and I knew they saved my siblings, so it was then that I knew I was done. I kept my head down for a year and I left. I graduated last summer and I didn't let my parents come. My parents weren't there either, but my parents expected tickets, and instead of claiming some for them, I got them from my grandparents instead. My parents were angry and confronted me about it. I'd already moved out of their house and now lived with my paternal grandparents. I told my parents I was done being their practice kid and I refused to keep it up anymore. I said they can mess up with my siblings and learn to live with it because I'm not here to be a punching bag while they get the best versions. My parents accused me of all kinds of things and called me all kinds of things, but I'm truly so done. Does that make me the idiot? Especially where my siblings are involved. Not the idiot. You're a kid and you've been scapegoated by your parents for a long time. I can't imagine how much it would hurt to have such frequent reminders that your parents suck. You've reached a breaking point, and breaking points are rarely graceful or pretty. Focus on you. Get yourself in a good headspace and work on your future. Find support outside your family and live your best life. I'm rooting for you. Oh wow, they used you like a test dummy and never gave you the same love or grace they give your siblings, so cutting them off is just protecting yourself. Tell them, sorry you were my practice parents, you failed. Or just the simple truth. You can say whatever you want because your opinion of me doesn't matter. I don't like you. You're bad people. Good parents don't treat their children like this, and you are to blame for losing your oldest. I personally would add that they don't try to contact me more, but relationships are hard. I wonder if OP was an unplanned whoops baby. It almost sounds like they've punished him his whole life without any cause, except that they didn't want him from day one. Yeah, I've known a few whoops babies whose siblings were then planned. Same story, they're treated like night and day. Whoops babies get all the negativity while the planned ones get all the love. It's punishment for tying their parents down and together unexpectedly. From what I've seen of the parents and their relationships, they probably wouldn't have remained together had a baby not been involved. So they project their hatred of each other on their firstborn. You're not the idiot, OP. You deserved so much more.